Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr for our instant reaction of another, Tom, I don't know if you watched the game, another Ohio State blowout, this time 38-7 over the Wisconsin Badgers, who were a good team, but Ohio State slightly better.
This is maybe a little less instant than some of our instant reaction shows in the past, because as we were walking out of post-game interviews, like there's a concept during like the NCAA tournament that there's like a cooling off period for the team. So they have a little bit of time after the game to go into the locker room, cool off, so no one says anything too rash.
Yes.
I said, we need a cooling off period because I feel like I'm going to make some reckless statements about how good this Ohio State team is. And I think we need to just take a step back for a minute. We'll post some post-game content, and then we can talk about the game.
But I don't feel like I have cooled down from this because as I was, even before you were saying that, I was leaving the post-game thinking, this is the best Ohio State team I've seen since 98, which is better than 98, which was the best team I'd ever seen, of my time of watching Ohio State. And so if that means, if I do the math, and this team is right now looks better than the best team that I ever saw at Ohio State, that would make this team, 8 games in, the best Ohio State team I've ever seen. And Tom, I don't like putting that out there because that's a lot. But after 8 games, the way they're doing this, screw your cooling off period, Tom. Throw it out there.
I mean, I currently have a story in the back end of our site with the headline, if they don't give Chase Young the Heisman, they should melt the trophy down, which, I mean, I probably won't use that as a headline when I publish it, probably, but I mean, it's kind of true.
Well, and if you don't, I will probably edit it and include that because it's absolutely true. Who is better in America than this dude in college football?
No one.
Maybe JK Dobbins, but not.
I think you can cross Jalen Hurts off the list of potential Heisman Trophy winners. I think you can cross Jonathan Taylor off the list of Heisman Trophy winners. If you were to, Jonathan Taylor was presumably like a Heisman finalist coming in. If you were to make a finalist field just of players who played in this game and you invited 3 finalists, I don't think Jonathan Taylor gets an invitation to New York.
Whew, that's a spicy meatball, and I think you're right because Taylor was outrushed by Master Teague.
Right.
And not that he would be the third. No. Obviously Justin Fields, I'm assuming.
Liam McCullough, yes.
Liam McCullough.
Yes.
True.
Yeah, I think you could make a compelling case for Chase Young, Justin Fields, JK Dobbins being the 3 best players on the field.
And yet, who is clearly the best of those 3?
Oh, Chase Young. I mean, we have had, we've had is he the best pass rusher in Ohio State history? Like, yep, I think he's there now. You're not that far. I mean, he's half a sack away from breaking the single season Ohio State sack record. It's October. They could play 7 more games this season. They are literally like, at halftime of this game, the season was half over.
Yeah.
And he had 13 and a half sacks. Like, I mean.
And I mentioned, too, during the game that one of my side predictions on my 5 predictions piece, one of the bonus predictions that do not count, I had Chase Young with no sacks. So, missed it by a little. You pre-wrote, I think you pre-wrote the 10 sack thing.
Yes.
Right? Where he was the second Buckeye since the first Buckeye since Mike Vrabel to do consecutive seasons of 10 sacks. What you did not think you would have to do, however, is write that he would break the school record, which he finished, half a sack short. You don't go in thinking, well, if he has 4.5 sacks, I'm going to have to run this story. So you don't bother writing that. But he did tie the school record of 4 in a game.
He's tied Joey Bosa's career high with 13.5. Joey Bosa, his sophomore year, had 13.5 sacks, and everyone went, what an incredible year. He's going to be a top 5 NFL draft pick. Chase Young just did that in half a season. Like every show, I feel like we go, but Chase Young's really good. You should pay attention to Chase Young. And it's like, no, seriously. We have been talking up Chase Young in like increasingly hyperbolic terms all season, and it's like I still don't feel like we've caught up to the level he's playing at.
Exactly,
right now.
We're not giving him enough credit, which is insane. I had a Michigan fan DM me after the game saying, "Is Joey Bosa the worst number one defensive end Ohio State has had in the last 6 years, 7 years. And it's like, yeah, I kind of think he is. And that's insane. Like, if you're going to rank them, and again, before the season, I poo-pooed anybody that said Chase Young would be up there with Nick and Joey Bosa. But now it has to go, for me, Chase, Nick, and Joey. Although Joey did it for 3 full years, even though his junior year only had like 5.5 sacks, but he was still a dominating player. But this guy, Chase Young, I know the NFL wants to take their quarterbacks number one overall, and for his sake, I would like to see somebody hold on to that pick and just use it on that guy, because he seems like, I felt the Bosas were can't miss. And if this guy is better than they are in college, man, it's fun to watch him play. Even there are times before the snap, like the quarterback is in trouble this way, this time, just based on the way things are lined up. 2 forced fumbles, 5 total tackles for loss, 6 total tackles. Just this game puts him into that Heisman list. The only problem is now he's off next week.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And you've got a couple weeks in a row where they're going to be kind of out of the main spotlight, so they're not a game people are going to be watching. So therefore, it's a game that people are watching just the halftime highlights, and that's 3 plays at the most, and it's probably mostly JK Dobbins and Justin Fields. So he's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. But then you've got 3 more weeks at the end of the year, Penn State, Michigan, potential Big Ten championship game, where he'll be back in the forefront again.
Yeah. The Ohio State Buckeyes defense today opened in a 4-4-3, which was, that's interesting. But then, it makes complete sense when Wisconsin runs the ball as they do, and worked out pretty well. Justin Hilliard got his first start. We got to talk to him after the game. Had a huge tackle for loss while the game was still in doubt. He was harassing Jonathan Taylor. I asked Hilliard, when did you find out you were going to start? He said on Tuesday. It was a pretty good idea because this is what they're leaning towards. I asked him, who did you tell? Which family members did you hurry up and go tell? He said nobody. He didn't tell anybody. So his family didn't find out until everybody else found out, which is pretty. You'd like to get the family's reaction now and find out how did you feel and what did it make you feel when you saw him out there after he doesn't tell you and he kind of goes dirty by not letting you know, hey, watch out for me. But I guess that's got to be a thrill for him. That's his first career start, I believe.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
And the fact that he was, he didn't tell anybody, and has to be a great surprise and just a fun day for his family as well.
Yeah, and that's a really, really cool story, because he came in as a 5-star prospect out of Cincinnati, and was sort of like, okay, this is going to be the next big thing at linebacker for Ohio State. And he has just had the worst injury luck throughout his career. And it hasn't just been like, he keeps pulling his hamstring. It's just been like a series of things, and just unrelated seemingly, and things just keep happening to get him, to conspire to keep him off the field. It was like really cool to see him not just get like a courtesy start, like, we're going to start all the seniors against Rutgers. Yay. Like, this was the coaches decided they need him to stop this offense with this Heisman Trophy contending running back, to see him out there, get that start, play as well as he did, make at least 1 or 2 big plays in that first half when it was very much in doubt.
It's not the first time he's done that this season either.
Yeah.
He's made some plays on defense. So it's really good to see. He was really happy afterwards. Even despite all of these injuries, this being his 5th year, he said it's the best 5 years of his life. It's the most fun he's had. But that guy's overcome a lot. And he said, it wasn't always easy. There are down moments, dark moments that you just have to get through, and was able to rely on Tough Borland through this latest injury, who's coming back from his Achilles. And so that was really good to see. The entire defense, Devon Hamilton again is just a beast. And Ja'Shawn Cornell had some moments. Damon Arnett, I think he led the team in tackles. He had to leave once or twice with the wrist, but came right back in. The way they ran to the ball, because there were a couple times being a screen play or Jonathan Taylor would get outside. You're like, well, if this guy doesn't get him, this is going to go a long ways. And yet that guy didn't get them, but there were still enough guys around chasing the ball. And I still sometimes flash back to last year where, like the defense is in a bad way now because this guy just missed a tackle. And so there's definitely going to be nobody behind him. And that's not the case anymore. What was the longest play? It was the 27-yard wildcat by Cruikshank, right?
He had a 27-yarder, and Quintez Cephas had a 35-yard reception.
And after, I think the next play after that 35-yard reception, Chase Young had a sack, forced a fumble. Pete Werner recovered the fumble. The Buckeyes would score a few plays later. Just what did Wisconsin rush for, and what did they throw for? Because
they rushed for 83 yards, 2.4 yards per carry, 83 yards on 34 carries, 2.4 per carry, passing 10 of 17, 6.4 yards per attempt. I mean, if you're going to give up 2.4 yards per rush and 6.4 yards per pass, I mean, you're going to win. They more than doubled up Wisconsin on the ground on a per carry basis.
Tom, do you know the last team to hold Wisconsin under 100 yards rushing?
I'm going to guess it was Ohio State was it in the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago?
Exactly correct.
Yes. Did they do it again in the Big Ten championship game 5 years ago? I think they probably did.
Probably. Although Michigan also held Wisconsin under 100 yards in 2017, back when they had a decent team. It was a long time ago when Michigan used to be one of the better programs in the Big Ten East. Check out Wikipedia. You'll be able to, find it there.
Scroll down. Keep scrolling.
It's there. Believe us. The rest of the defense, I mean, Tough Borland had a good game. Even the fact that they started Justin Hilliard instead of maybe starting Baron Browning and Tough Borland together tells you how much faith they have in Hilliard. And that's not even really a guy we talked about this season. So that's 5 guys there that they have complete faith in. Sean Wade didn't get to play as much because they didn't. The nickel wasn't something that they were. Not even a nickel. It's the base. But once they got into passing downs, he would be in there as well. Just a really sound defense, and we say that every week. And there were concerns last week after Northwestern ran the ball a little bit. Whoever had those concerns, not me. You were pretty foolish. And you want that cooling off period, Tom, but you look at the rest of the slate, and where do 24, 27, 31 points from an opponent come from to beat this team?
I mean, Penn State's up 21-0 on Michigan State at halftime right now, so, maybe. I think there's some questions about their offensive line and some questions about Sean Clifford and just how well he'll play. And, that's a possibility. And, if they get Wisconsin again in the Big Ten championship game, Wisconsin can adjust to the adjustments that Ohio State threw at them today.
Can they?
And they can do different stuff.
They can adjust. Doesn't mean it'll do anything.
Exactly. I mean, and you're gonna play some pretty good teams in the playoff. I mean, I'm pretty confident Ohio State can score a whole lot of points against LSU's defense, but LSU's offense.
Well, wait, I'm just talking Big Ten stuff. You need to slow your horses, Mr. Cool Down period.
Need to cool off a little more. Okay.
Jeez, talking about the playoffs
one week at a time. Well, I can tell you they're not going to give up 30 points or so next week because they are off. So.
That's right. They will give up 7 fewer points than they gave to Wisconsin, which, credit to those guys. Now, if they do meet up with Wisconsin again in the Big Ten championship game, Justin Fields, as we shift over to the Ohio State offense, in the post game said, he felt like they could have put up 50 on Wisconsin if the weather was fine, and they put up 38 in this kind of weather, so he ain't wrong.
No,
but that's not going to be something that will be ignored by Wisconsin if they have to face the Badgers or if they get to face the Badgers again. So it's a little interesting to see. Maybe he doesn't realize that they could play them again, so you don't want to say anything too much. But it wasn't even bulletin board material. It's just matter-of-factly. That's very it's like a microcosm of this team. Just matter-of-fact, oh, yeah, we just put 52 on you. Yes, we just put 38 on the number one defense in the nation. It's not cocky. It's just this is how it is.
And you got to remember, the last time they played a number one defense in the country, they hung 62 on them. So if you remember when that was towards the end of last season,
right?
If our listeners remember, that was against Michigan last year. They put 62 points.
Who used to have a decent football program.
Mm-hmm. Keep scrolling. It was. I had the same reaction that you did. Like, oh, that's a little spicy. I mean, it's true, but it's also a little spicy. And you're right. I don't know that they're going to face Wisconsin again. I mean, Minnesota at this point has a 2-game lead on Wisconsin in the West. There's a decent chance they'll play Minnesota instead of Wisconsin if they get to Indianapolis. But yeah, that was like, oh, that'll come up the next time they play Wisconsin.
And that will motivate the Badgers, of course. But if this was dry, and the ball could be thrown and caught well, because there were drops, there were bad throws, there were open receivers. KJ Hill was open on a touchdown that got overthrown, and there are plays to be made, and we're just talking 2 more touchdowns.
Yeah, it was the first half of that game was the first time all year that I've kind of gone, oh, they look sloppy.
Yeah.
They were dropping passes. They don't normally drop. The line did not play well. Thayer Munford did not have a good first half. He was better in the second half, but something in that first half, he was getting beat off the edge. There's a lot of pressure on Fields. Mm-hmm. He got sacked.
He was sacked 4 times in the first half.
Yeah, 4 times in the first half.
Overall.
I mean, that's a lot, because you look at Ohio State sacked Jack Cohn 5 times. So for Fields to get sacked 5 times, you think about how dominating the Ohio State defense was to get to Cohn 5 times. Mm-hmm. 5 sacks on Fields, especially with as mobile as he is. Like he probably avoided a couple sacks there too. And there was at least one that I can think of where he, made a guy miss, juked, spun, and there was just another guy right there to just, completely pancake him.
The first sack was probably just the ball got snapped before anybody was ready. Like I think Josh Myers snapped it on 1 instead of 2.
Yes. Yeah, when the rest of the offensive line all doesn't move, that means it's on the center.
Right. Yeah. So, we'll talk, but it's still that's 4 and then 5 for the game. It was his worst game as a Buckeye, and you still scored 38 points against, statistically the number 1 defense in the nation, which tells you that this is just a complete offense with all kinds of weapons. Quarterback is a product of those guys around him, and Ohio State has a bunch of guys around him, and it starts up front with an offensive line that I think we talked about it all week. They wanted to show that they were the power team in the Big Ten in terms of the power running team. They did that. Justin Fields said after the game that they were teasing JK Dobbins throughout the week, saying, "Hey, Big Ten's best running back is coming to town, so this is going to be a show. Big Ten's best running back coming to Columbus," just to egg him on a little bit, because as Ryan Day told us, JK Dobbins, he's a competitor. He's competitive. And you saw that throughout the game. I'm not going to say it was as tough as JK has run, because he's run like that all of the season. He looked quicker and more decisive at times and was shooting through some gaps like we rarely see him, but we see it a lot. But it seemed a little quicker. Just an outstanding game from JK, and whatever accolades you want to give him, he has earned, because he left Jonathan Taylor in the dust today. After the game, Taylor and Dobbins and Tony Alford spent some time together talking, and Jonathan Taylor, of course, is a supreme competitor, a sportsman, but that was JK's show. And we wondered coming in, like, do you give it to him 30 times? Does he rush for 200? He only needed 20 carries, 163. Just outstanding.
Yeah. And first Buckeye to ever rush for 1,000 yards in his freshman, sophomore, and junior seasons. Second Buckeye ever to do it in 3 separate seasons, with a guy named Archie Griffin, who you may a running back of some renown in these
he
parts.
won the Heisman. I can't remember which year.
Yeah,
it was either
either 74 or 75
or 75. I can't remember.
Or C, all of the above. Yeah, I mean, JK Dobbins, 8.1 yards per carry, and he did it with a long of 34. So it wasn't like it was 20 carries for 163 yards, but he had like an 85-yarder in there to kind of skew the number. 8.1 yards per carry. Master Teague, 5.8 yards per carry.
And Master Teague, we talked about a little bit after the game, because when we've mentioned this on the show, we don't always get to see Master Teague completely, because we're usually heading downstairs when he is getting 40 or 50 of his yards. But again, 76 yards, and I don't want to – it's not mop-up duty. It's just we need a better term when you're running the clock out. He's
like the closer.
He's definitely the closer. But you don't really get a save for a 7-run win. He pitches the last 2 or 3 innings, and you're up by a ton of runs. But he's a closer, and the guy is now. He came into this game rushing for, I think, 92 yards per game in Big Ten play. That's going to drop to, 87, 88. But you're looking at a guy who, say, 14 games, he's going to rush for 1,000 yards.
He is well over the pace for 1,000 yards already this season.
He's rushing for more in Big Ten play now than JK did last year.
And you've got, JK Dobbins had 1,054 yards last year total for the season. Teague is going to beat that. I mean, we had talked before the season, will JK Dobbins and Justin Fields both hit 1,000 yards rushing? Fields is not going to get there.
He's not very good.
In your opinion.
Just look at the stats. 12 of 22.
Fields is going to end up somewhere in the 400, 500 yards, which is they want to keep him as safe as they possibly can. They want to, and they don't need him. I mean, they don't really need him in the running game when you have the threat of him.
Yeah,
and he'll do it enough to keep it looking like a threat, but they don't have to have him run it because Dobbins keeps going. I mean, you go back to the summer, and I just remember all of the times Ryan Day talked about how great JK Dobbins was. And this is, it was so consistent. Mm-hmm. And, you kind of put these scenarios in your head, like, okay, what is this going to look like on the field? Because sometimes you hear them talk up a guy and you don't ever see it on the field. And sometimes they talk up a guy and it's like, oh, okay, wow, that was his best season. JK Dobbins, Justin Fields, Chase Young, Master Teague, Chris Olave. I mean, so many of these guys on this team. Zach Harrison. Like, you're in like the 95th percentile outcome for what this season has looked like for them of like all the possible outcomes. Like of all the universes where Justin Fields is playing for Ohio State this year, there's some where he's kind of not accurate, or the offensive line isn't very good, or the receiver unit isn't very good, and it's okay, and he's throwing 55%, and it's just fine. This is like, if you could pick out of the hundreds of universes, this might be the best Justin Fields.
You're going very Rick and Morty on us here.
This might be the best JK Dobbins. Like, it's just, they are getting like 95th percentile outcomes or above from so many guys this year. And that's, you want to give credit to the players, because obviously it's the players, but when it's everyone, that's Mickey Marotti, that's Ryan Day, that's the assistant coaching staff too, doing their clearly media
pressure from the media
relations, obviously big part of the process.
True.
But that's a whole lot of other people also really doing their jobs at a high level to get all of those guys.
It's also recruiting the right guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that started pretty much with this junior class, I'd say, in terms of, that was when Real Life Wednesdays really became a focus, and that was what brought a lot of the guys in. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I talked to Urban Meyer about that last year, and he didn't think it was a coincidence either. And, now you're seeing a team that is able to go out there and beat Wisconsin. I mean, 2010 team couldn't do that.
10 out of 11 against Wisconsin. But the 2010
the one team, they couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why you strike it from the record.
Exactly. You check the record book; they didn't beat anyone that year. So.
No, I don't remember. I was there, but I wasn't. The Chris Olave, best game as a Buckeye, not in this season.
Non-Michigan division, yes. Yeah.
And really, having a big game against Michigan used to mean something. Go check Wikipedia. It used to be, keep scrolling. But career high, 93
yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, which matches his career high. Mm-hmm. He did not block a punt today, so not quite as good as the Michigan game last year.
No, definitely not. But he is so smooth, is so calm. And there are times on the field where you feel like, well, it's about time for him, because the middle of the field looks open and they need a touchdown. He's one of those guys that he's like, I think it was it 10-7? No, he got the first touchdown, right?
Yes.
Did he also score the first touchdown against Northwestern?
Maybe.
See, maybe.
Probably.
He's probably even.
It was a Friday.
It's a long time
I don't
ago.
work Fridays.
Yes, but he just sets a tone for the Buckeyes, and He has responded since not getting a catch. And you know what? You know what they ought to do? Don't let him have a catch these next 3 weeks. And then watch him go for like 14 and 180 against Penn State and like 12 and 160 against Michigan.
Yeah. I didn't realize this until just now. Justin Fields completed 12 passes all day. 1 to Garrett Wilson, 1 to KJ Hill, 3 to JK Dobbins, 7 to Chris Olave.
Yeah,
so you came into the game, you did not have your senior receiver, Austin Mackey, you're starting Z, okay? So pregame show, we said, okay, Chris Olave, this is your time. You did not get a catch out of Ben Victor, your other senior wide receiver.
I don't even think he had a target, maybe one.
He was targeted at least once on the sideline, on the near sideline, on like a comeback or something like that. But KJ Hill, 1 catch. I mean, he kept that catch streak alive. Barely. And had a couple drops, which is extremely uncharacteristic for him. But it's wet. Like this is a day when you're gonna have drops. And so. And lo, a sophomore shall lead them. And Chris Olave, more than half of the receptions, more than half of the yards, both of the touchdowns, long reception of the day.
Chris Olave, his career at Ohio State is half over now.
Not quite.
You don't think so?
Oh.
Year and a half.
Yeah. Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You have not had a ton of wide receivers leave that room early, but that's...
Paris... No, he didn't.
No.
Who was Michael Thomas?
Michael Thomas did, but Paris came back. Terry McLaurin came back. KJ Hill came back. Johnny Dixon came back.
But
not all of them were coming off.
Michael Thomas.
And then
Jalen Marshall.
One of those is a strong indication that sometimes things work out, and one of them sometimes things don't.
But we'll see. He's playing very well as a sophomore right now. We'll have a decision to make. Just offensively, again, we keep saying, even though the offense may not be firing on all cylinders at times, it still fires on plenty to just blow people out of the water.
Right. Well, at this point, you're just sort of, you go in every week expecting perfection. Okay, well, they should be up by 35 at halftime. And it's like, well, it's only 10-0. What's wrong? Why they didn't score for an entire quarter today? What is going on? Did they
only 10 points in the second quarter?
Right. Yeah.
Ryan
exactly.
Day okay?
Yeah. It was. I can't even imagine what Nina Day had to say after this game. If she thought last week was a tough first quarter.
She's probably not happy that. Why are we relying on a 49-yard field goal to get the day going? That was not acceptable.
That was not. We can have a process versus results conversation about that if we want to. First quarter stats for Ohio State: 3 first downs, 12 rushes for 23 yards, 1 for 2 passing for 17 yards. So 14 plays, 40 yards in that first quarter. You're going to have quarters like that sometimes, and this is a good opponent, and there's a little bit of a feeling out process, and the weather was terrible. It was raining real hard at the beginning of the game, kind of lightened up a little in the middle, and then started raining real hard again towards the end. And then right at the end of the game, it stopped right as we went down on the field, which was very nice.
Perfect.
To cooperate with us.
Because I was just going to stay in the tunnel and watch TV. But, Day even said after the game that the rain was sideways at points early on, so they just didn't want to make any mistakes by throwing the ball. So they just kept it on the ground and figured, just don't do anything stupid and let the game play out. And it's another credit to Ohio State that they were able to overcome a blocked punt. And that's not something when you block a punt, it's like 90% of the time you win, or if you score on that blocked punt. They didn't score on it; they scored 2 or 3 plays later. But they made it that they blocked the punt, they get the touchdown. It's 10-7, and then Ohio State went over the top. Turned their hat backwards, a la Sylvester Stallone, and then the next 4 drives right down the Badgers' throat. One of those was 4-play, 4 runs.
Yep.
And JK Dobbins that's where he murdered him. And not to be offensive and use the M word, but he murdered him. He murdered him dead.
That crime up north.
That crime up north. But, hey, They were able to do it a couple of different ways. They threw the ball quite a bit on some drives. Other drives, they didn't even bother throwing it. And they could just, whatever they wanted to do, they did it on those 4 drives. And Justin Fields, I asked him, did Ryan Day, did anybody have to say anything to you guys? Like, no, nobody had to say anything. We knew we had to turn it on. We like adversity. It's like, well, you might like it, but you don't get it. You're like a shut-in who likes candy, but you don't ever go get candy. It's like, what adversity do they face? They face adversity in practice. But this is the first kind of adversity they had. And so, they did pretty well with what they faced. And, so maybe more adversity, and then you get like 4 touchdowns out of it. Do you want to pause?
No, keep going.
All right.
So let's run through the drive chart real quick. Since we do this, we seem to do this every week. Punt, punt, punt. Okay, first quarter, not great. We just went through that.
Yep.
Second quarter, field goal, long, 12 plays, 41 yards. Had some just sloppiness at the end of that kind of killed that drive. Field goal. 8 plays, 85 yards, touchdown. That takes you to the half. First drive of the third quarter, again, just kind of a weird start to the third quarter. They go 3 and out, have to punt. After that, 8 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 4 plays, 53 yards, touchdowns. 5 plays, 55 yards, touchdown. 8 plays, 45 yards, touchdown. 9 plays, 46 yards, end of game.
Yeah.
And it was like they very easily could have punched in another touchdown at the end of the game if they wanted to.
What's the longest time of possession drive for the Buckeyes? Look at that.
Yeah, 5:34, and that's the end of the game. It's just, the touchdown drives were 1:54. 8 plays, 85 yards, 1:54. That was the 2-minute drill. That was the 2-minute drill, and that's just to run a 2-minute drill to perfection like that. 8 plays, 85 yards, 1:54 against a good defense. They haven't had to do that this year. This is basically the first time we've seen them really boom, 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 right down the field and go. They've had a couple where it's like, oh, we'll hit one big play and then kick a field goal or something like that. That was just boom, 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 right down the field. Then 8 plays, 75 yards and 2:34, 4 for 53 at 1:47, 5 for 55 and 2:20, 8 for 45, 4 minutes and 10 seconds at the end of the game when they're kind of trying to run it down, and then 9 plays, 46 yards and 5:34 at the end when they're really just killing the clock.
Just able to spread them and shred them in that 2-minute drill. And there's really nothing they can do. Now, we've got some questions from Twitter. Tom, I will ask you. We'll put the shoe on your feet. This from Burner Account 69, one of our most frequent contributors. Tom, what the hell was Greg Schiano doing last year?
Well, it wasn't anything good. To the brief recap, which is a story we have told many times on this show, is things were real complicated and real unnecessarily complicated, and took a team that was much faster players than the opponent had and put them in difficult situations where they had to react slowly because they had to think a lot and were in bad positions, and put guys in, out on an island. You didn't have good gang tackling. You didn't have great tackling at times at all.
So let me ask you this. If Greg Schiano, when he watches this team now, do you think he's like, told you?
I honestly, I would love a real candid conversation with Greg Schiano about what he thinks right now about this defense. Because there is no way, as an objective observer, you can look at this as anything other than last year was just absolute malpractice by the defensive coaching staff. And,
Do you think you would say it was Alex Grinch's fault?
Well,
Grinch got my way.
I think the narrative on how things went last year is that Schiano really kind of imposed his will on how things went. That's the story that you hear on the program, and that Grinch was a little frustrated by that and left. And so whether you want to blame Grinch for any of last year or not is completely up to you. He showed up at Oklahoma this year and was immediately christened the new king of defense. And then,
so if you want to blame him for something, you can blame him for today.
They gave up 48 points to Kansas State. So,
Tom, is Kansas State? Do they score a lot of points normally?
No, they do not.
They do not.
No. So, I mean, this will be one of these things that has no actual impact on the narrative around Alex Grinch, I'm sure, because that's how that seems to go. Because he's a likable guy and did a nice job turning Washington State from a complete tire fire into a decent defense.
Absolutely.
And there's reason to think he's good. Alex Grinch has never in his life had a defense remotely like the one that Ohio State has this year, and maybe that's not a fair standard because I mean, outside of select editions of Nick Saban's Alabama, I don't remember a defense looking like this.
Because you're talking about an Ohio State defense that today they came out in a 4-4-3. They could just as easily come out in a 4-2-5. They run a base defense with one safety and three corners. I mean, whatever. And we talked before the season, plug and play. That's what they want to do. They could do anything, all of these different things. And, the first game of the season, Ja'Shawn Cornell, defensive tackle, starting at defensive end, picks up a sack and a half, 2 tackles for loss. The possibilities are almost endless, provided they're all healthy. And that's, the bye week comes at a good time. This one from VanGo_0 on Twitter. Why not burn a timeout when Fields lost his helmet as opposed to plugging in Chugs? First of all, I love that they were going to throw the ball with the screen when Chugs came in. Second of all, can you burn? You
can do it for a helmet. You cannot do it for an injury. Okay. Is the dividing line there, I believe.
I like the idea of keeping Chugs in there because the defense is going to assume you're handing the ball off.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think that may be why.
Yeah.
And because you're confident enough in Chugs to do exactly what he did. Either throw the screen or if it's not there, don't screw up.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did.
And they are to the point with him where they're fine. Like he's fine. He is not going to be Cardale Jones coming off the bench to just completely firebomb people in the college football playoff.
He's not the Master Teague of the quarterbacks.
Probably. But he is a perfectly capable quarterback. Like he's been in the system now for more than a year. He's, I think, completely capable of running this offense and throwing enough to kind of keep people honest. And if the line's blocking and JK Dobbins is running and Master Teague is running and the defense is playing the way that can, this team could win the Big Ten with Chris Chugginoff at quarterback right now, right?
I don't doubt that.
Maybe they get outscored by Penn State. But
even with teams loading up to stop the run, you still kind of feel like they'd be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
And throw it enough.
Yeah.
But, can it be any worse than Shea Patterson at Michigan? Michigan, their quarterback, Shea Patterson, was good previously at another institution, at Ole Miss, but then he came to Michigan and was not so good. Now, Michigan has had good quarterbacks in the past. Scroll way down on that Wikipedia, and they've had some decent quarterbacks. Right now, they are struggling. We kind of covered this one already from at JW Scoden on Twitter. Justin Hilliard was in there on some pretty important downs. Did a linebacker get hurt at some point for the coaching staff to put him in? Nope. He was starting all week long in that 4-4-3. From at Aaron J. Wenzel. I should read these before I actually read them.
He's also surprised to see Justin Hilliard.
Yes. Oh, there you go. And so there's some more Justin Hilliard. Okay, here from at Countdown Dave, I believe a Michigan fan. How deep in the NFL playoffs do you see the Buckeyes advancing, Tom?
Yeah, well, it depends on if they get the Bengals, but I don't think the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, so I would guess they probably would not advance in the NFL playoffs. But
here's one for you, Tom, as we run through these from at Blackthorn82. Can we make Garrett Wilson the permanent punt returner for the Buckeyes? And we talked about this during the game. It's time.
I don't know what else. I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, I feel like at this point, DeMario McCall is like, well, they want to keep him involved because he's not really involved in the offense, and they want to keep him involved in the game. So, but I mean, he really hasn't shown the game-breaking ability. It was like some of those years where you kept waiting for Dontre Wilson to do something spectacular, and it just kind of never happened. It was like, well, come on, just do it, and then
do something.
And it just never happened. I mean, he had one today where he was fielding a punt falling backwards. That's not good.
And you haven't really seen, I don't recall Garrett Wilson having any of those moments.
No.
He just seems so sure of himself when he's back there.
Well, and they put him in there with, in a rainstorm against a good opponent
uphill
in a 10-point game. And so if you trust him then, you trust him. So, and he's just so obviously more of a threat in that game, in that spot than anyone else they have on this team. Like I don't know what they're waiting for at this point.
From at Buckeye KY, I'll say Buckeye Kai. What's your opinion of Penn State? And are they going to be the toughest test of the season for Ohio State? Could a one-loss Penn State in a close game with OSU make the playoffs? I don't think a one-loss Penn State will make the playoffs because I don't know that they've looked good enough. They've had a close win against Pitt. I guess they're doing pretty well right now against Michigan State, but they haven't really been dominating, and they don't have the media behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see them being in that discussion. They'll be in a discussion. I don't see them making it. But what are your thoughts on Penn State being the toughest test for Ohio State? For me, it's still Michigan.
Penn State's probably a better team than Michigan right now. Michigan's on the road. You kind of you sort of always default to you have to win the Michigan game. Michigan has ruined a lot more Ohio State seasons than Penn State has over the years. So, the fact that that's a road game, the fact that that's a one-game season for Michigan at this point, basically, especially if they lose another one between now and then, that's the only thing that can turn this from, unmitigated disaster to silver lining for Michigan. So,
and I know people out there will be like, well, of course Penn State is a more difficult game than Michigan, but Penn State is the better program. Now, it wasn't that long ago. Michigan's program was actually better than Penn State's. So keep scrolling and you'll see that. And if you have to, go get your grandparents' encyclopedias and go look at the school records from 50s, the 40s, the 60s.
Look for B for Bronze Age. And
let's see, the next one. Oh, this is a good one, though, from at Plessinger3. Are you, excuse me, are you worried about pass protection against elite teams? B, what happened to KJ Hill this year? C, who is the second best player on defense? Let's start out with the pass protection. That is a concern.
Yeah.
You need to get Thayer Munford healthy. Brandon Bowen, I thought, has held up well, but Thayer Munford, clearly he's not been healthy. And there was one time where he even lunged and fell down. Like somebody took his walker and he went straight down. And so they need this week off to whatever is ailing him and whatever it was. He wasn't even a game time decision. He's fine. So at this point, it feels like, as we said last week, you're just going to start playing through pain. But is that pain affecting him negatively? It sure didn't look like it was helping him.
Well, he looked today when he was out there. I looked at
the rain also hurts your joints. And
the rain,
as you get older, you get old man bones, and that rain, man, that's going to hurt.
As I was watching him out there in the first half, I thought two things. One was he doesn't look healthy. Like he doesn't. I know they said he's full go and not a game time decision. He didn't look right today. That is not. You've seen enough of Thayer Munford to know what Thayer Munford looks like when he's playing well, and that was just that. Yeah. That wasn't it. So then the next question was, okay, so if Josh Allaby was healthy, would Thayer Munford be playing today? And I don't know the answer to that.
That's a good question because, as we said, he was not a game time decision, but he played so poorly at times. You wonder if they would have thrown Allaby in there just to help him out, just to let him watch for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. And I would like to know what is the prognosis for Allaby.
Yeah,
is he going? Because I think that's a big thing. And Day, I guess we'll try to get something out of him next week, and it's like talking to the Godfather, of course. And we've already missed the day of his daughter's wedding. Mm-hmm. We've already passed that. What happened to KJ Hill this year? To me, this is just a different offense. It's similar. It's the 2017 offense where KJ Hill led the team to receptions, averaged about 10 yards a catch. This isn't last year where they're throwing it 40 times a game and they're finding him and he's running free. It's different. They're running the ball more, so they're not throwing it nearly as much, and it's just a different offense. So it's not KJ Hill's fault, even though, Tom, he is dropping the ball more than we've seen him drop it in a while. Almost one a week, maybe a half a drop a week.
Yeah, and I mean the Wisconsin game was obviously probably the worst one we've seen in terms of drops. I think he had a couple, but it was raining. It's a little understandable. They have had some structural changes in this offense. It's not just the throwing it less. He just killed people on those crossing routes last year. It was like him and Paris Campbell. You just hit those crossers just all day long, and they really haven't run that this year. I mean, I'm trying to remember.
And if teams aren't going to play man, then it's harder to run those against the zone. So.
Right. I think everyone looked at the Michigan game last year.
Yeah.
And don't let them do that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been taken away this year, and that has then opened up a whole bunch of other stuff. But KJ Hill has been almost more of a decoy at times this year, which I think KJ Hill is probably as a senior leader probably okay with how this season has gone so far. So
I had somebody ask me, and I don't even remember where or when, just this week. do I think that KJ Hill is upset that he came back? No.
I
don't know how you could be in this type of offense. Even as unselfish as these guys are, they're probably having the time of their lives.
Yeah.
Just destroying people. That's fun.
Yeah.
You know, go build something with your Legos and just kick the hell out of it. That's fun. Or let somebody else build it.
The last question there was who's the second best player on this defense? Probably Jeff Okudah. I mean,
Jeff
I think
that would
going
be
to
the
go.
first answer.
Yeah.
You know, I might throw Damon Arnett in there just because. But my first thought was Devon Hamilton, and then I went through the rest of the defense. I'm like, oh yeah, Jeff Okudah. But yeah, I mean, maybe the better question is who's the third best?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Fuller's up there. I mean, Jordan Fuller's played real well this year. And
Sean Wade
has been. I mean, you're going to
Malik
have
Harrison.
You've got potentially like at least 3 first-round draft picks on that defense, depending on who comes out early. But at least there's a lot of options, and not being the second best or third best player on this defense still makes you a pretty good player.
Last one from Chetty Vidova at Chetty Vidova on Twitter.
Sedovadova.
Yes, but it's Chetty. That's how it's pronounced.
All right.
I believe.
In your opinion.
NBA players, man, from Europe.
All right.
Caesar Chiz. I'm going to edit all of this out.
Probably not.
Probably not. You're exactly right. Has there ever been a player that has played that had a looser chin strap than Justin Fields? I don't notice that from up top.
He lost that helmet on that play, and he looked like he banged his head on the turf too. Like that was one of those like ooh, like because I think that was the one that I talked about earlier where he kind of spun away from one player and then someone was coming from the other side,
and then they just pull like the face mask off as they're rolling off of him.
Yeah, and just knocked the helmet straight off the top of his head, and look, he banged his head on the turf. I mean, that looked bad. Yeah, gotta buckle the chin strap because you don't want to get pulled off the field in a crucial moment.
Yeah, because now you're faced with a second and long at that point, and so then you assume it's going to be a handoff. Now you've got third and long, and you're pretty much screwed.
Yep.
So Tom, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
I think we got it.
All right, we do have it. So that will do it for our instant reaction from Ohio State's impressive 38-7 win over the Wisconsin Badgers. Now we have a week off. We won't be a week off from the podcast, though. We'll figure something out.
Well, we'll have Ryan Day interviews on Tuesday, so we'll have a Tuesday show, and then we'll do something.
We'll do something.
I get the sense that just generally in the state of Ohio, there's a decent level of interest in this team, and people will probably not complain about having a little more content than we might otherwise have had.
Okay, well, we can do that. So thank you all for listening. We will talk to you then.
Tomorrow's alright. We could steal a car.